everything goes well. Okay, well, welcome everybody to the community Zoom. I'm so glad you all are joining us from the far reaches of the universe. I think we have someone here from Japan. We have people from Utah. We have people from California. We have people from the Midwest and from the East Coast. And just so glad everyone's here and joining us today. So I want to start off this community Zoom just actually asking you a question. And that is, what kinds of mindset shifts have you noticed in your experience on the program as you've been making some changes with your habits, making changes with your health? What are some actual mindset shifts or things that you've noticed with that? Mandy.
I could talk about this for like 5 hours because I was a woman that weighed over 300 pounds when I started. And I weighed 320 pounds. Now I weigh in the 180s. And I literally thought that I had a threshold. If I never went over 280, I was okay. So like if I started weighing over 280, then I would get worried because my ankles would start to swell and I couldn't walk very well. And so Casey, my coach on the screen right here, she had to like push through barriers with me for years to like help me understand that that's not healthy. That's not a healthy mindset. Yeah. So really, I've had to like create whole new standards for myself.
Oh, that's awesome. So you've created like a whole new life that wasn't in your past. It wasn't something that was in your past. It was something you had to create in your future. That's awesome. I love it, Mandy.
I believe that I could do it and not give up, you know?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Believing in ourselves is the most important thing. Okay. What else? Anybody else have some, it could be specific or general mindset shifts that you've noticed occurring for you?
Joe, I have one.
Yes, Beth.
So for me, are you talking about overall with the health journey of Optavia, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So overall, the shift came with my mind. It's that lots of disappointments in life doesn't dictate how my future will be. And this vehicle to get healthy, to help other people be healthy, to be rewarded for it is, I mean, it's really nothing short of amazing. Because there's a lot of great jobs out there that pay really well. There's a lot of great jobs out there that do that. But to be able to work and care for people the way we do is just, it's just amazing to me. And I just, I'm so humbled and grateful, really.
It's so true, Beth. Who gets to do what we do? Who gets to link arms with people every day, connect with them, love them, and we get to be compensated for that? What a gift. And it's huge for mindset. When you turn around and actually start paying it forward and helping the people around you, wow, what a mindset shift goes on in your own mind. So today, I actually have some prepared remarks. I'm going to just share some thoughts. But I know that you're thinking about some things right now that you probably are going to start thinking about along the lines of mindset shift as we go along. And please feel free to pop off mute, interrupt me. I'm really good at like talking for a long time. So just interrupt me and I would love to chat about any topic along the way. But I'm going to go share my screen for just a sec. And you'll have to tell me if you see my screen here. Do you guys see this? Are you willing to do the work? Mandy,
yes.
Can you give me a thumbs up? Okay, yeah. Okay, perfect. So this topic that I'm going to be discussing tonight is all about brain work. We as coaches, of course, recognize that there's work that has to be done in terms of your health. And mostly, at first, people think that it has to be done like exercise or eating right. And of course, those things matter. I'm going to ask, can everyone mute themselves unless they have a specific question? Just tap your screen and hit mute. That's perfect. But the mindset work we do to shift from a space where we are always desiring to eat and always desiring to have more and more and consume, into a shift where we actually desire to be healthy more than we want whatever junk is sitting around. So how do we do that? I'm going to talk a little bit about brain work. There is necessary brain work that has to occur in order to shift our paradigm, because we have a certain paradigm. We have a certain life that we've been living over and over again, and we have a certain way we think about ourselves. The best way I can describe this is I was at a park with a group of women with their kids, and I was just having conversations with people. We were just hanging out, and they all know I'm a health coach, and so we sometimes talk about health, but not very often. Anyway, this one gal was chatting with me, and she's passionate about health, and she's just like, it's so interesting. And this gal is just super healthy. She always eats healthy. She's slim and slender. She's not a health coach, but she'd be an amazing health coach. But we were just chatting, and she goes, it's so interesting to me because my whole life, I have never, anytime I eat after about 6 p.m., it makes me feel terrible. It makes me feel so sick. I can't do it. I just can't eat after 6 p.m. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why. We just talked a little bit. And I said, I went home that day with an interesting thought in my head. And the thought was this: that girl has told herself a story since she was little. I don't know what the story is, but the story was this. I don't know why she has that story, but this is her story. I feel sick if I eat after 6 p.m. That became her story. And guess what? It became her truth. We are telling ourselves stories all the time. We don't know it, but we are. We're telling ourselves stories. And you know what? Those stories become our truth. And so I want to talk about that today. I want you to look at these two pictures. There's a little stack of blocks, colored blocks, and then there's this beautiful castle that obviously took some thought and some planning and some figuring out. I'm going to tell you, this was done by 2 children. They were the same age, same abilities, same family, same grade in school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why the difference? Well, I'll tell you the difference. One child just willy-nilly threw some blocks on top of each other. They didn't give it much thought. They were just stacking blocks. But a different child started thinking about what they wanted to create. And then they went to the pile of blocks and they started to find the pieces they needed. So they found the perfect little turret, and they found the perfect little tower, and they found the perfect little cylindrical pieces that make the columns, and they found what they needed to create what they wanted. In the same way, we do the same thing. We can either just willy-nilly stack things in our lives, and sometimes we get stuck in that pattern of just stacking and not really having a creation in mind. But this is the power about what you do with your brain. When you actually put your mind into creating something, not just running from something, not just stacking bricks, but literally creating something. What's amazing is those pieces that are necessary for your creation show up. They show up, and it starts to occur in your life. So what is visualization? Well, visualization is work. It is work. And if each one of you had gotten on your health assessment with your coach likely helped you to visualize what it would be like when you achieved your goal. They probably asked you how getting to your goal might affect your family. They might have asked you what it would feel like when you woke up that morning and you were at your healthy weight and you went to your closet to get dressed, what that would feel like. What would it be like? Experience it. So, having that act or process of interpreting in visual terms or putting in a visible form your dreams, you can do that in your own mind. And it's very powerful when you're trying to achieve a goal. And I know that each one of us are trying to achieve a goal of optimal health in whatever aspect of life that we're going into. Now, I want you to take a look at these interesting pictures. On the left-hand side, you can see a trail at the top left that is a very overgrown trail. You can see it's a little bit muddy, and you could get through the bushes. You can kind of vaguely make out where you would go. And then underneath it, you can see this forest that has been just like completely separated, and this huge superhighway is laid down. Shoo! Let's say these are sort of the same forest. If you want to get from, point A to point B, which one's going to be faster? Trudging through the mud and the bushes, or going on the superhighway? Obviously, the superhighway will be more rapid to get you there, right? When we visualize, when we actually put some effort into what we want to create and start actually really thinking about it, we are doing ourselves a big favor, because what that does in our minds is we're connecting neurons. We've learned that neurons are very plastic. We can actually shape the way our neurons connect. And so we do that through thought. Thought is so powerful. I know that many of you have probably heard of the book, As a Man Thinketh. It's a wonderful book, but basically talks about how our thoughts really shape who we are. How do we think? Those thoughts will lay down a superhighway to where we want to be. And so spending some time visualizing your goals is not, it's not a waste of time. It's actually necessary work that has to be done. And if you're not spending any time visualizing it, you're probably trudging through the mud, is my guess, rather than going on the superhighway to your goals. So why? I always like to bring it back to the why. Why visualize? I'm going to show you these two pictures. So on the left, you see this messy kitchen, and on the right, you see this absolutely gorgeous, I don't know, that is not what my kitchen looks like, but it's just gorgeous, right? Totally clean, but not just clean. It's like the whole atmosphere is just beautiful. On the left-hand side, let's say, this is actually kind of how my husband approaches chores. He goes at it like this. He's like, okay, you know what? I guess I need to do a few dishes, and I'll just do those dishes. He doesn't really have a vision for what he wants to create. He's not creating anything. He's just doing a chore. How many of us, when we are choosing health, like let's say we open up a fueling to eat, or let's say we have, we make a healthy meal. Are we doing it like a chore, or are we creating something? Because I'll tell you, I'm very different in the way I clean my kitchen. I have a creation in mind. And the thing on the right is what I'm creating. So when I go to clean the kitchen, I'm not thinking to myself, oh, okay, I'm going to wash this dish. It's so clear to me what I need to do. I don't even have to think about what chores I have to do. It literally is so clear to me what I have to do to get to my creation. And when we do that kind of visualization in any aspect of our life, especially with our optimal health, with our health and physical health, or it might even be with your financial health, it requires you to have some visualization. And by visualizing, it'll be made known, like you'll be really clear in your mind what the next step is. You don't have to be told, you know it already. So this is actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about why I have decided to coach. When I first started coaching, I wanted to serve my mother. That was my one reason why I wanted to coach, because she had been obese my entire life. And she reached out to me and said, Joe, I need you. And so I said, yes, mother, I will coach for you. Like that was why I coached. I had one person that I wanted to help. It was my mom. And little by little through the years, I was able to impact more and more lives. And I started to see how Optavia could be an impact for good and allow me to really serve people at a very high level. And so my why for coaching is to impact the world for good. And that opportunity of coaching is available to anybody. In fact, we encourage all of our clients to participate as coaches in any degree, whether you help one person or whether you help 1,000 people, because it serves you more than it serves anybody else. Actually, when you choose to coach, you change. You go through your own mindset shift. You start to shift. You start to look outward instead of inward. You start to see what you can create and what you can create in the lives of others as they transform. So I just want to read this really interesting quote by Neville Goddard. He says, "Determined imagination, thinking from the end, is the beginning of all miracles. The future must become the present in the imagination of the one who would wisely create circumstances. We must translate vision into being, thinking of into thinking from." So ignorance of this ability to think from the end is bondage. Okay, so this is kind of a deep, like very deep philosophical quote, but what he's saying is basically what our big mantra, like one of our many, what we call our habits of transformational leadership, but one of the mantras we have is to lead from the future, but act in the now. That means put yourself in the future, think about what you want to create. What is that going to be for you? And then come back to the present and say to yourself, what does that person, the person who became that incredible person I want to become, what did she do today? So let's say for your health journey, an example, in your health journey, you might say to yourself, I know that I want to lose 70 pounds. Maybe you have a lot of weight to lose. And it's not about the pounds so much, but you're focused on what your life will be like when you get there. That you'll be able to chase your kids, that you'll be able to go on hikes with your family, that you'll be there for your grandkids, that you'll be there for your own kids, that you'll be there for your spouse in the way you want to show up, that you can feel good and feel energized. You're actually really like putting yourself in that future place. And then you come back to the present and you say to yourself, what actions does that future person do today? It's a very, very powerful way of visualizing.
Jo, could I say something really quick?
Yes.
I think another thing to keep in mind is don't let our past dictate what's going to happen with our weight, with our health. Because I think so many times we think, well, I've messed up so many times and I always fail and I'm going to, don't, like you said, look from the future, don't look from the past in getting there. Like believe in your coach that they're going to help you there and you're doing something different than you've ever done before. And one thing that really inspires me are the before and afters that your coach posts. I look at those and I'm like, they did it and they kept it off. And that to me helps visualizing that future too, is knowing that so many people are getting there. And get rid of that old mindset of fear.
Yeah. What story are you telling yourself? I love that, Mandy. You mentioned you just sort of touched on this. You said you might have in your past been like, I always fail. I always yo-yo. I always. If you're starting a sentence like that in your head, stop it. Stop it. Replace it. Replace it and improve it because you get to choose what you think. Nobody else chooses that for you. You get to make that decision. So what neurons are you going to keep saying you always, you always, you always? Do you want to connect the neurons that say, I always make a mistake, I always do this? Or do you want to connect the neurons that say, I always choose health, I always drink my water, I always feel good, I always go to bed on time, I always am patient with my kids, I always serve people, I always show up? Which one do you want to connect? You get to choose it. It's your choice. So this is actually, it leads perfectly into this. We get to write our own story. And I'm going to actually make this an assignment this week. Those of you who are on this call, this is your assignment. It's a very, very, very powerful assignment. Write your story. Write it in the present tense. Include detail and emotion. Write it as if it has already occurred. Okay, so these are just little tips for writing your story. Something is better than nothing. Perfection is not the goal with this assignment, okay? This is all about writing your future and deciding what that will be. Okay, now keep in mind when you're writing your story that you can change your story. If you write out your story and you decide, you know what, after about a month, you're like, I actually want to change this story. I don't really want this to be my story. I want to change some pieces of it. Then go ahead and change those pieces. So don't feel like if it's the end all be all. It doesn't have to be perfect, but do it. because it will change you. I've given this as an assignment to my clients, but not all of my clients do it. Do you know why they don't do it? Because it's hard and it's scary. Because when you actually sit down and write your story, you're putting yourself on the line and you're requiring your current self to live up to your future self. And that's a scary thing to do. So, but be brave. I know you guys, I've got a lot of brave people in here, so we're going to write our stories. Step 2, visualize. Spend a little bit of time visualizing the exciting future that is in your hands. I find that it's most effective to do some visualizing before bedtime. I happen to have what I call a vision board. You don't have to do it this way. I do find it really, really helpful. I help my clients and my coaches imagine. I use images. And this is the thing, the who really matters. Who are you impacting? Who? How many lives are you impacting? Are you just helping yourself? If that's all you're helping, it's not going to change. But if you can figure out who in your life you're impacting and make it big, make it vast, the more people you impact, the more likely it's going to occur. And then sometimes I listen to just beautiful music or epic music while I'm visioning. So I use that as a tool. I want to read this really quickly to you. This is by Genevieve Behrend. I think she's German. But she says, when your understanding grasps the power to visualize your heart's desire and holds it with your will, it attracts to you all things requisite to the fulfillment of that picture. Remember how I talked about the boys building their blocks and the boy who was building his tower? He found all the pieces he needed. Why? Because he had a visualization of what he wanted to build. So he wanted to build a column, and guess what? He found pieces that made columns. Same thing occurs when you're visualizing something that you want to create in your life. You will find what you need. Visualizing is the great secret to success. The conscious use of this great power attracts to you multiplied resources, intensifies your wisdom, and enables you to make use of advantages which you formerly failed to recognize. So many times we think if we get stuck in the past, we think, oh, I can't. And if you're stuck in the future, actually what happens is you change your way of thinking and you start to think in terms of, if I could, how would I? If I could, how would I do it? And I have found that in this way of thinking, you can accomplish so much more than you ever believed possible. And I know that's true for Mandy. She dug in and she decided, if I could, how would I? If I could be 180 pounds, how would I do it? And she found a way. I want to talk briefly about timelines because that can be kind of a challenge when you're setting a goal. Like, when am I going to get my goal? Should I make a goal? What should the timeline be, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to talk just briefly about kind of planting these seeds. You know, once you've visualized a goal or you visualize something and you're really kind of putting yourself there in the future, you basically have already created a non-physical seed. You have a thought and you plant it in your subconscious mind. Emotional involvement will instantly begin the process of formation into a physical form. So as soon as you start to get emotionally involved, and that's why my husband always does not like it when I'm like, oh, what if we do this to our house? What if we do this? And then I start dreaming out loud and then I start like emotionally getting attached to the idea. He's like, don't do that because it just means trouble. But there is a gestation period for every thought to actually come into physical form. So we don't really know what that's going to be when you're making a goal. You don't know. So Mandy, you might not have known how long it would take you to get there. You made a guess, right? And here's the principle about making goals and timelines. Never change the goal. Okay? If you have a goal and you have a creation you're going to make, don't change it. You can change the date. You can change the plan, but keep focused on your goal. It will happen. This is my experience with goals. Taking the time to visualize them is very, very powerful. And I'm just going to mention this at the very end because I think this is an exciting quote. It's by the same person who I just quoted. But the common error most people make when guessing at the time it will take to reach the goal is that they give themselves too much time. And I'm going to give you an example of that. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share for a second. today, today, I taught at BYU. Okay, so I'm an adjunct professor down there, and I teach Irish dancing. And I had to create a hornpipe step. And I had a very small window of time, and I had about 10 minutes before I got in the car, and then I had about a 25-minute drive. So for 10 minutes, I turned on the music, I started to visualize, I started to do a few things, and then I had a few kind of like rough steps that I'm like, oh, I think I want to do this, I think I want to do this. Got in the car, and I was just driving, visualizing, driving, visualizing, driving, visualizing. When I pulled up, I had the makings of a step in my mind, and then I just started really kind of solidifying it right there in the parking lot before I went in. Then I went in, taught the class. It was great. Okay, take that and how I used to do things. I used to take weeks. I'd be like, oh, I have to make up a hornpipe step, and then I'd be thinking about it, and then the next day I'd think about it again, and then I would spend a whole lot of time, and then I'd do this, and then I would listen to it, and I'd change it, and I'd spend hours and hours. And to be honest, it's not a bad thing to spend, good time and really quality time. But was it quality time? That's the thing I always have to remind myself. Or is it sometimes better just to give yourself some time that you're going to get something done and get it done? There's no right or wrong, but I'm just showing you that whatever time you allot for something, you'll fill that time. So choose how much time you want to spend on things and just fill the time the way you'd like it. And with that, I'm actually going to open up to questions. I know that this has been probably kind of eye-opening to you on some respects, or maybe it's been a review. What are some ways that you guys use, or what are some thoughts that you've had, or questions you've had, or what are some things you do to visualize your future self and act in the present?
Joe, I'll share something.
Oh, thanks.
I love this subject. I never get tired of talking about goals and habits and how to do them and how to get better at them. And so I just like soak this up like a sponge. But something that I have found that helps me, whether I'm doing vision board or my, writing out my story in present form is like so fun to do. But I also just remember that our brain is like a muscle, and you did hit on this a little bit, but just like when you're working out and you're trying to get your arms stronger, you're trying to get your legs stronger, you're trying to get your abs or whatever. Our brain is the same way. And when we hit a hard spot with, like making the right decision with our eating or with whatever in our brain or our goals, you got to push through, just like a muscle. And the minute you do, you get stronger and stronger in your brain as, the same as you do in your body. So I don't know if that can help, but it helps me, especially on that day you're having a hard time or you're making the wrong choices and you go to bed that night going, oh, I didn't get my water in, or, you instead of feeling like a failure, just realize that your brain is a muscle too, and it does take practice, and you can't just wake up perfect, So I hope that makes sense. But
I love that. I love that you touched on that, because we don't need to feel like failures when we face our current reality. We don't have to feel like failures. We just recognize where we are. It's like going to the gym to a personal trainer, and they're like, can you lift this heavy weight? And you're like, nope, I can't lift that heavy weight. And they're like, okay, good to know. Let's take you one step down so you can lift the proper size. So if you are facing a struggle, that's where your coach is so helpful. You're facing a struggle and you're like, man, I can't resist this. I'm such in a really hard place. And we're like, okay, well, let's change some structural parts of that, or let's change the circumstance, or what could we do to make it so that you can be successful through that kind of a situation. And sometimes just having that sounding board, but don't be angry at yourself for your current reality. You're just like, okay, that's where I'm at. I understand it. Now, what could I do?
I don't know if was there anybody else off? I'll say there's something, I'm going to have to go back and watch the recording, because there was something you said at the beginning of this Zoom that was almost like one of those aha moments for me. And honestly, I can't remember it. Sorry. But I'm going to go back and listen to it. So if you missed the first 5 minutes, go back and listen, because there was something that I was like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to hear this. But another thing that I really liked is that I think, I love that you touch too on a lot of us coach, and we love when our clients coach too, whether it's helping one person or 1,000, because if any of you have ever taught in any realm, when we teach other people, we learn. And I still remember the day I was on a phone call talking to probably somebody who was asking about program. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, I don't think I'm going to eat pizza and cookies ever again. And it's just one of those like mind shifts that just happened, and it was okay. It was just a different shift for me. And I recognized what it was. And so I feel so empowered, and I get to see those things and feel those things all the time, which is awesome. And I loved, Joe, one more thing, and then I'll get off because I'm long-winded, is I loved your visual, is this hilarious, of you doing always and changing that verbiage, because I think it's so important to not get into, all those things, and really finding fun in our journey, not just stacking blocks, not just doing chores, not just eating a fueling and drinking my water and eating a fueling and drinking my water, but really creating and finding fun in our journey, no matter where we are. Thanks, Joe. That was awesome tonight. I really appreciated it.
Thank you so much. Well, and I appreciate that everybody came on and shared their energy and were a part of this. Every Thursday night, it just seems to be growing and growing. And I just love the community that we have here. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.